Hello, friends. Foxfyre here, and before we begin, a brief disclaimer. The views, beliefs, and experiences shared in this podcast are those of the individual hosts and guests. They do not represent any organization, employer, tradition, coven, or community. This podcast and the topics discussed are offered for storytelling, exploration, and entertainment purposes. Anything discussed should not be taken as professional, legal, or medical advice. By continuing to listen, you acknowledge that all content is for informational and entertainment purposes only, and release the podcast and its creators from any liability related to how you choose to engage with these topics. Now, let's step softly. The path awaits.
Gather beneath ancient branches and winding forest trails to explore the sacred secrets that linger in the dark. Welcome, friends, to the Hollow and Bow podcast. Alright, it's been a little minute. Not as bad as our normal breaks, but I think we're doing pretty well. What do you think, Foxfire?
I think we're doing great
Yeah,
considering Solstice was last week and
yeah,
Yule was last week, and
we're doing a great job. We're staying pretty on track. Don't
yeah,
mind the
yeah,
meowing
yeah.
in the background, please. I have a cat who wants to come in to help with the recording, and we all know how cat help goes.
Terrible.
Yeah,
But with that being said, we do have something great coming up this new year,
we
right?
do. Oh,
Because
yeah.
January 3rd, that's a great day for the new year. That's when the wolf moon or the super is coming out, and it's also a super moon.
Which is
So,
also.
and then on top of that, this is the first full moon of the year, which is great.
Mhm.
Great time to set your intentions.
Oh, yeah.
But it's also this month is a blue moon, which means we get a full moon at the beginning of January and at the end. And that's not going to happen again until May of this year.
Hmm.
So you got plenty of time to charge stuff up this month and
Oh,
get
yeah.
stuff ready for a great, fantastic year since, finally everything is coming out of all these different alignments that have been
Hmm.
giving us all the negativity for the past 15 years, and planets are coming out of their retrogrades, and everything is starting to slowly realign to positivity, which is what we all
Hmm.
need in this lifetime. So keep
It's
that in
very.
mind. If you missed this wolf moon at the beginning of the month, we do have a chance for another moon at the end of the month. I don't know if they'd actually call that another wolf moon, or if we just call that just a blue moon this month. It might just be a blue moon this
I
month.
think it's. They probably call it a blue moon at the end. Um, but yeah, it'll be great. Like, get your water, get some moon water charged up, put your crystals out. It'll be good. Now, the other fun thing about full moons is we do have a fun cryptid tied to those. It's going to be the focus of our episode for today. But for right now, let's go ahead and start off with our prayer. Anpu, lord of the sacred path, Anubis, jackal-headed god of the west, I call to you, you who walk between shadow and light, protector of souls and keeper of truth, stand watch over us this night. Guide our steps through places unseen. May your eyes see what ours cannot, and your wisdom guard us from harm. As you weigh the hearts of kings, so weigh mine. Keep it light, keep it true, keep it just. Help me speak the truth and guide us to find honest knowledge. By your hand may we walk in safety. By your light may we never lose our way. Dua Ampu, hail Anubis. There's something ancient in the sound of a wolf's cry, something that stirs the blood and whispers of the wild places we've long forgotten. Tonight, Foxfyre and I are going to follow that sound beneath the full moon into the shadowed heart of one of humanity's oldest fears and oldest fascinations, werewolves. So, we're going to start off looking at the origin and early history of the werewolf. Long before the silver bullets and horror movies, the werewolf walked through our oldest stories, a shape not just of fur and fang, but of fear, power, and punishment. The idea of humans transforming into wolves is ancient, older than most written myths. You can find its echoes wherever wolves and people share the land. Some of the oldest stories actually come from Greece. The earliest written descriptions of men turning into wolves come from ancient Greece, from around the 5th century BCE, from the historian Herodotus, who wrote that the Neuri, a tribe from the region that's now the Ukraine and Belarus, were said to transform into wolves for several days each year before returning to human form. To the Greeks, these tales were exotic, mysterious, proof that the wild edges of the world still held magic. Then came the tale of King Lycan, or Lycaon. This story appears in Ovid's Metamorphoses, from around the 8th century. The story goes that Lycaon angered Zeus by serving him a meal made of human flesh. For that blasphemy, the god struck him down and transformed him into a wolf. His name would give birth to the word lycanthropy, the curse of becoming a wolf. In that story, transformation wasn't a freedom. It was divine punishment, the price of arrogance and sacrilege. Lycaon's transformation was total, man into wolf, not some hybrid monster. He became a true beast, as punishment for his crimes against the gods. In those early classic myths, there was no half form, no tortured in between. To lose one's humanity meant becoming the animal entirely. As we travel north, the story shifts. In the Volsunga saga, from the 13th century, the warriors Sigmund and Sinfjotli, sorry, I'm not very good at pronouncing, found enchanted wolf pelts. When they wore them, they took on the full strength, speed, and instincts of wolves. Again, they became actual wolves, not man-wolves, creatures of mythic power, closer to shape-shifting shamans than a horror movie monster. Here, shape-shifting wasn't evil or a punishment. It was primal. It blurred the line between warrior and beast, between civilization and the wild. In the 12th century, in France and Brittany, stories like Bisclavret, a Breton lie written by Marie de France, told of knights who transformed into wolves yet retained a trace of human reason and sorrow. These were tragic figures, noblemen trapped in bestial form. Artists of the time began to depict them as wolves with hauntingly human eyes, their humanity flickering behind the beast's face. Then came the shadow of the Middle Ages, and the organized church's influence redrew the lines. Where older traditions saw transformation as a spiritual or mystical act, Christian Europe cast it as corruption, the devil's mark. Suddenly, the werewolf wasn't a cursed hero or tragic warrior, it was a warning. The beast within became sin itself. By the 15th and 16th centuries, werewolf trials swept across Europe, especially in France and Germany. No longer a hero of saga or a symbol of divine punishment, now it became a crime. Across the 15th and 17th centuries, fear of witchcraft, famine, and plague gave rise to hysteria, and in the eyes of the church and state alike, the wolf and the witch hunted side by side. During the height of these werewolf trials in Europe, witnesses claimed to see men only partially transformed, humans with twisted limbs, or fur sprouting from their skin, hands curled into claws. It's from these fearful testimonies that the idea of the half-man, half-beast truly began to take shape. The most infamous of these cases was Peter Stump, the so-called werewolf of Bedburg. In 1589, in what's now Western Germany, Stump was accused of making a pact with the devil and using a magical belt to transform into a wolf. He allegedly confessed, under torture, to killing livestock, villagers, and even members of his own family. His execution was public and brutal, meant to serve as a warning that the devil's wolves walked among men. But modern historians believe Stump was less a monster than a man crushed beneath superstition and fear. Not far away in Ansbach, Germany, around 1685, the wolf of Ansbach terrorized local farmers, killing sheep and children alike. When the wolf was finally hunted and killed, townsfolk claimed it was the resurrected spirit of their cruel, recently deceased mayor. They dressed the carcass in human clothes, cut off its snout to resemble a man's face, and hung it from the gallows, a grim reminder of how thin the line between human and beast had become. France also was haunted by its own wolves. In 1573, Gilles Garnier, known as the Hermit of Dole or the Werewolf of Chalons, was accused of attacking and devouring children in the Franche-Comté region. Villagers said they saw a gaunt figure, sometimes a man, sometimes a great gray wolf, dragging victims into the forest. Like Stump, Garnier confessed under torture, claiming a phantom had given him a salve that turned him into a wolf. He was burned at the stake that same year. A few years later came Jacques Roulet, the werewolf of Caude. Caude? I don't know how to pronounce that. It's spelled C-A-U-D. Arrested in 1598 near Angers, France. Witnesses found him covered in blood beside the remains of a young boy. Roulet claimed to have changed into a wolf using an ointment given by his family. But unlike Garnier and Stump, he wasn't executed. A court declared him insane, and he was confined to an asylum. Even madness, it seemed, could be rebranded as lycanthropy. The werewolf of Poligny, another French case from the early 1600s, told a similar tale. 3 beggars were accused of being wolves in human skin after a series of unexplained deaths near the Jura mountains. Villagers claimed to have seen them hunting in lupine form, and the men were executed without trial. In these stories, the line between hunger and heresy was perilously thin, and poverty itself could be mistaken for a curse. Further east, in Belarus, legends told of the werewolves of Polotsk. By the 17th century, rumors spread of soldiers and peasants who could take the shape of wolves to defend their lands, or to curse them. Unlike the Western tales, the Polotsk wolves weren't always damned. In Slavic tradition, the line between witch, shaman, and werewolf were blurred. Some said these were volkodlaks, people who used ancient rites to serve as protectors during times of war. Then there were the Livonian werewolves, from the Baltic region, in what's now Latvia and Estonia. In 1692, a man named Thies of Kaltenbrunn stood trial and claimed proudly that he was a werewolf, but not a servant of the devil. He said the Livonian werewolves were hounds of God, who descended into hell 3 times a year to fight witches and demons, ensuring good harvests. He wasn't tortured, and he never recanted. To this day, his story stands out as one of the few where the werewolf was not cursed, but chosen. Of course, possibly the most famous of all werewolf tales is the Beast of Gévaudan. Between 1764 and 1767, in the rugged hills of south-central France, a monstrous creature killed more than 100 people, mostly women and children. Eyewitnesses described it as a giant wolf with reddish fur and an almost supernatural ferocity. Hunters, soldiers, and even royal marksmen tried to kill it. Several beasts were shot, but the killings continued. To this day, no one knows what it truly was. A wolf, a pack, or something else entirely. But the terror it left behind cemented the werewolf as both legend and legacy, a final echo of the old world's fears before the dawn of modern reason. Even after the trials ended, the werewolf refused to die. Folklore evolved, shifting with the times. Soon came the artists and writers of the 18th and 19th centuries, who began to romanticize the curse. The Enlightenment's fascination with madness and the supernatural blurred folklore with psychology. The beast within became a metaphor. Illustrations from that time show creatures standing upright, muscles straining beneath fur, caught mid-change, neither one thing nor the other. If there's one thing all the werewolf legends share, it's that sense of change, of crossing a boundary between man and beast. But what that transformation looks like depends entirely on the time and the tale. In the oldest stories, those told before silver and cinema, the werewolf wasn't always a creature of full moons and cursed bites. Sometimes it was a person who chose to take on the wolf's form, through ritual, through a magical pelt, or by drinking from an enchanted stream. Other times it was a punishment, a divine curse, or the mark of dark sorcery. The story of the werewolf has walked beside humanity since the beginning, and it didn't just belong to Europe. Wherever people lived close to the wild, where the wolves howled, their shadows took on familiar forms. And I believe, Foxfyre, you're going to tell us about some of these varied forms.
I sure am. So, some of what I actually looked into as well does kind of coincide with what you brought up and some of what you just talked about, Raven. So, some of
Exciting.
this is just kind of like a small review, and it'll be
We're
okay.
like-minded. We have similar
Exactly.
interests.
So, so some of it's going to be like a little mini recap for everybody, and other stuff it's going to be some fresh new information. So, werewolves, shapeshifters, half human, half beast, creatures that are caught between worlds. But what if I told you that not every wolf howls for blood? That around the world, the idea of men and women turning into wolves isn't always a curse. Sometimes it's a calling. From the temples of ancient Greece to the forests of Ireland, from the deserts of Arabia to the mountains of Japan, let's explore the many faces of the werewolf. So, like we just discussed, our story begins in ancient Greece, where the first recorded werewolf tale was less about monsters and more about morality. The legend speaks of King Lycon of Arcadia. He dared to test Zeus himself by serving him a meal made from human flesh. Disgusted, Zeus thundered down a punishment. Lycon was transformed into a wolf, cursed to roam the wilderness, a reflection of the beast inside him. To the Greeks, the transformation wasn't random, it was divine justice. Lose your humanity, and you become what you truly are. Later in Rome, the same idea persisted. The transformation revealed sin, not strength. Yet across the cold northern seas, the story ran wild in a different direction. In Norse and Germanic cultures, the wolf wasn't a curse, it was a source of power. Meet the Ulfanar, the wolf warriors, men who donned wolf pelts, entered trances, and fought with supernatural strength. They weren't victims of magic, they embraced it. For them, the wolf spirit represented courage, loyalty, and divine fury in battle. So already, two worlds diverge. In the south, transformation meant punishment, but in the north, it meant empowerment. Just a quick side note while we're talking about the Nordic tradition, Berserker was actually it's I can't remember exactly what it is for. I think it's bear warrior or bear fighter is basically what it means, and they would actually wear bear pelts into battle
Oh,
and
wow.
just lose control.
Huh.
Yeah, so
Okay.
there's like a right to become a berserker, and it includes the bear pelt. So that was kind of interesting. Now let's go into medieval Europe, where the moonlight was never just pretty; it was dangerous. In France, the loups-garous haunted villages and forests. People whispered that sinners and oathbreakers were doomed to roam as wolves at night, only to return human by day, ashamed and afraid. The church taught that the curse could last 7 years unless forgiven by a priest. It's a tale wrapped in faith and fear, mirroring the anxieties of the Middle Ages. Temptation, guilt, and the unknown lurking beyond the candlelight. Then we travel southwest to Spain and Portugal, and the legend takes on a tragic twist. The Lobasan was often the seventh son in a family, doomed by birth to become a werewolf. He might be a wanderer, cursed to transform under the full moon. But sometimes he wasn't evil. He was pitied, a man bearing his family's sins, not his own. It's a story that blurs the line between monster and martyr. And then we reach Ireland and England, where the myth takes yet another turn. The Irish Falaid were not cursed at all. They were guardians, wolf warriors, said to protect villages and guide lost travelers through dangerous woods. In some tales, they served noble families, defending them in times of need. Imagine that. Not a howling horror, but a noble protector, cloaked in fur and moonlight. Across Europe, the werewolf became a mirror, reflecting each culture's fears, hopes, and faith. In France, he's the sinner. In Iberia, he's the victim. And yet in Ireland, he's the hero. So as European settlers crossed the ocean to the Americas, they brought their monsters with them, and they also found new ones waiting. Among Native American traditions, stories of shapeshifters existed long before colonization, but they weren't werewolves in the European sense. This is a subject we've tried to broach before and it didn't go well. Some tribes tell of beings that can move between animal and human form, sometimes sacred, sometimes forbidden. But it's crucial to make a distinction. In many traditions, these are flesh pedestrians, figures known for stealing or wearing skins to gain power. These beings aren't wolves at heart, they're corrupted humans using dark magic to mimic nature. Transformation here isn't about curse or blessing, it's about moral decay. When settlers arrived, their fields of the loup-garou mixed with those local tales. From this fusion came the stories of dogmen, half human, half canine, creatures said to prowl the edges of farmland and forests. They became part of colonial folklore, spreading from the Great Lakes to the Deep South. Each story carried echoes of old Europe and New America, a blend of guilt, wilderness, and the unknown lurking just beyond the campsite. But the werewolf doesn't stop at the Atlantic. Across Asia, shape-shifting tales take different forms, often feline or fox-like, but always exploring the tension between humanity and instinct. In China, the Huli Jing, or fox spirit, could take on human form. Some were mischievous tricksters, others were beings or lovers in disguise. Their transformations weren't curses, but expressions of power, often tied to wisdom or seduction. In Japan, there's the Okuri Okami, the sending wolf. Travelers in the mountains would sometimes feel something following them in the dark, silent, unseen. If they stumbled, the wolf might attack. But if they walked bravely, it would guard them all the way home. A protector and predator all in one, a theme we've seen before, but told through Eastern eyes. Meanwhile, in India, ancient stories tell of Rakshasas, powerful shape-shifting demons. They could take on animal or human forms, often driven by hunger, pride, or chaos. They represent transformation as moral corruption, like Lycan, reborn in a different land. And in the Middle East, the Qtrub haunts the edges of civilization. It's a shape-shifting ghoul, half dog, half human, that prowls graveyards and deserts, feeding on the dead. In these tales, shape-shifting is divine punishment, not freedom. A lesson in restraint, faith, and the danger of losing one's soul to hunger. So what do we make of it all? From cursed kings to holy warriors, protectors to predators, the werewolf legend shifts with each border. Yet, it always circles back to one question. What does it mean to be human? Every culture uses the wolf to explore the boundary between civility and instinct, the line between the village and the forest, the known and the wild. In Greece, crossing that line was sin. In Norse lands, it was strength. In Ireland, it was service. In Japan, protection. And in the Middle East, warning. The wolf becomes what we need it to be. A monster when we fear our instincts. A guardian when we learn to live with them. Maybe the werewolf isn't a creature to be feared at all. Maybe it should be a reminder that even in the darkest night, we ourselves carry both the beast and the guardian within us. So, flowing from our joyful time of where all these different werewolves come from, now let's step into pop culture. We've all seen the movies. Once upon a time, the werewolf was a village terror, an omen in the dark woods. But today, you'll find them on movie posters, comic panels, TikToks, howling under studio lights instead of the full moon. Our stories begin not just in Hollywood, but in literature. Before special effects, before our silver bullets, writers were already obsessed with transformation. In 1865, a French author named Guy Endore wrote The Werewolf of Paris, often called the werewolf's answer to Dracula. His monster wasn't a mindless beast, but a man torn between sin and civilization, set during war and chaos. It used lycanthropy to explore guilt, repression, and the savagery hiding in every human heart. Just a few decades later, Robert Louis Stevenson gave us another kind of shapeshifter, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Not technically a werewolf story, but the symbolism runs parallel. Science replacing magic, inner beast replacing external curse. Stevenson's story asks the same question myths had for centuries. Can you control the animal within? Or does it control you? Then came An American Werewolf in London in 1981, a turning point for horror cinema. It mixed dark humor, visceral transformation, and human tragedy. The monster wasn't evil, it was cursed. And that transformation scene? Still one of the most haunting depictions of pain and identity ever put to film. Each story took the werewolf from a folkloric warning into a psychological metaphor. No longer just man into wolf, but man versus self. By the time the cameras started rolling, Hollywood was hungry for monsters. In 1941, Universal Pictures released The Wolfman, starring Lon Chaney Jr. This film cemented the modern werewolf myth, silver bullets, full moons, and tragic fate. The creature was both killer and victim, giving horror its first sympathetic monster. Fast forward to the 1980s, and the wolf took on a new fur. Films like The Howling, Teen Wolf, and American Werewolf in London added layers of humor, sexuality, and teenage rebellion. The werewolf became a metaphor for puberty, change, and all the messy emotions that come with it. And then came the 2000s, when fur met fandom. Underworld turned werewolves into sleek, leather-clad soldiers, locked in eternal war with vampires. And Twilight gave us Jacob Black, the heartthrob wolf who made transformation look like self-empowerment and not damnation. Whether you howled or cringed, one thing was clear. The werewolf had evolved from monster to pop icon. Outside of film, they prowled into TV. Shows like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Being Human, and Teen Wolf again reimagined the myth about identity, control, and belonging. And in comics and books, they became anti-heroes, detectives, even superheroes. See Wolfsbane, Lucian, and Bigby Wolf from Fables. The curse had become cool. And just to give everyone a moment so they're not cursed, let's take a second to step away and take a deep breath before we keep on going into the theme behind the fur. Let's take a moment, friends. Breathe in the incense, stir your tea, and let the magic settle. If you're enjoying this walk through the hollow and bow, don't forget to share the circle. Follow the podcast, leave a review under Moonlight, or even send it to a fellow seeker. Your support helps keep the candles lit and the stories flowing. Now, let's step back into the shadows. Hopefully everyone's back safely. Hopefully you got your pieces of silver to continue talking to us and protect yourself just a little bit longer from the werewolves. So, going back into the fur itself and looking at, the wolf in pop culture, why does the werewolf endure like it has? Because beneath the claws and the chaos, it is a story about us. Let's start with duality and control. Every werewolf story explores the split between human and beast. The polite face we show the world versus the instinct we hide. From Dr. Jekyll to the Wolfman, the message is timeless. There's a war inside every person between restraint and release. Then there's the transformation itself. In horror, it's often shown as agony, the body twisting, the mind fracturing. It's both curse and liberation. Destruction and awakening. That tension makes the werewolf one of storyline's richest symbols. Sexuality and identity are deeply woven into the fur as well. Think about it. Transformation triggered by emotion, cycles of the moon, fear of exposure, and the longing to be accepted for what you are. For many fans and writers, the werewolf has become a symbol for queerness, gender fluidity, or anyone who's ever felt other. The monster's pain becomes a mirror for human expression. In some modern takes, like Ginger Snaps or Hemlock Grove, the transformation parallels puberty, menstruation, or sexual awakening. It's messy, emotional, and empowering. In others, like The Underworld or The Order, it's about control, learning to channel that wildness into strength. So whether the werewolf was tearing through London streets or navigating high school hallways, one thing stays the same. It's never just about fur and fangs. It's about transformation, freedom, and fear of who we might become when the mask comes off. Today's werewolves are just more diverse than ever. In indie films, web series, novels, creators are using the myth to tell new kinds of stories about identity, trauma, and belonging. They're not just cursed, they're coping. Some are reclaiming the creature through queer or feminist storytelling. Others use it as commentary on mental health, addiction, or rage. The monster has become metaphor, therapy, and empowerment all in one. Even in games like The Witcher or Elden Ring, or comics like Something is Killing the Children, the werewolf stands for transformation, both the danger of losing yourself and the beauty of embracing your power. Pop culture has done something remarkable. It took a creature of fear and turned it into a symbol of freedom.
I never thought about how diverse the werewolf story has become in pop culture, but now looking at that and hearing everything, I'm like, yep, that has definitely permeated, hasn't it?
Oh yeah, it has. I never really thought of the queer identity being a what's the word? Being basically like a metaphor for a werewolf. Because that makes sense. It's something you hide and it's something you fear for a very long time. And then all of a sudden it's like it bursts through at the right moment at a certain point in your life and it's like, oh shit.
Yeah. It's interesting. That's definitely something I'm going to think about. That's an intriguing take.
It is. So it's something to take in and kind of absorb.
Hmm.
Speaking of absorbing, let's talk about our new product. I'm kidding. We don't have a new product. Um, But talking about how werewolves have modernized, now we can kind of go into how lycanthropy has become modern and how the superstition still runs within all of us under the full moon. So we're going to talk about the old superstitions that still linger in the full moons, the silver charms and whispered fears. And maybe, just maybe, we'll discover that the werewolf never left us. It just simply evolved. For some, the idea of shapeshifting isn't a myth. It's a metaphor for energy, identity, and spiritual resonance, which we just talked about. In a metaphysical and New Age circles, energetic shapeshifting is seen as a kind of spiritual alignment. Practitioners describe taking on the energy of animals, the grace of the cat, the freedom of a bird, or the power of a wolf, not through magic or curse, but through intention and empathy. These are often called Therian or otherkin communities. People who feel a deep spiritual connection to a non-human identity. For wolf-aligned Therians, it's not about growing fur or fangs, but tuning into the wolf's instincts, loyalty, intuition, awareness, and pack connection. It's a way of saying, the wolf is a part of who I am, not a monster, but a mirror. In these spaces, transformation isn't fearsome, it's healing. In spiritual communities around the world, wolf spirits are guides, guardians, and teachers. They show up in meditation, dreams, and energy work, often symbolizing protection and instinct. Many see that the wolf as a totem of transformation, reminding us to trust our intuition and navigate both solitude and community. In native and shamanistic traditions, the wolf spirit often teaches balance, how to lead, but also how to listen. Online metaphysics spaces, from forums of social media, are filled with modern packs who share experiences of connecting with wolf energy. It's part mysticism, part psychology, the desire to belong to something both primal and purposeful. Whether literal or symbolic, the wolf spirit has become a modern myth we consciously choose to believe in, not because we fear it, but because it empowers us. Even outside spiritual circles, werewolf lore still howls through modern superstition. Let's take the full moon. Emergency rooms do report higher patient spikes. Teachers swear students act wilder. And pet owners say animals tend to get a little restless. Science hasn't found a lunar link, but the myth persists. Maybe because the moon's cycle feels like a mirror to our own. Bright, hidden, then bright again. Then there are old protections still lingering in pop culture and custom. Silver, which is the pure metal, said to burn the corrupt. Wolfsbane, the deadly flower, once believed to ward off or even cure lycanthropy. And iron, the universal protector against magic, from fairies to werewolves alike. You can find these symbols everywhere, in jewelry, tattoos, even video game mechanics. We might laugh at old superstitions, but deep down we keep them close, because they remind us that not everything can be explained. Sometimes belief itself is protection. Of course, the most powerful shape-shifting happens not in the body, but in the mind. Psychologists often view the werewolf as a symbol of the primal self, the instincts we repress to survive in society. Anger, desire, freedom, wildness, the emotions we lock away until they break through. For some, embracing the inner wolf is therapeutic, a reminder that instinct isn't evil, it's natural. We just have to learn how to balance it. In Jungian psychology, the wolf could represent the shadow self, the part of us we deny, but must integrate to become whole. So whether through myth, meditation, or metaphor, the modern werewolf is still asking us the same question our ancestors faced upon the moon. Do you fear the beast within, or will you make peace with it? So, from ancient curses to spiritual awakening, from silver bullets to self-acceptance, the werewolf has come full circle. Today's beliefs and superstitions aren't just echoes of the past, they're proof that myth adapts to our inner worlds. The wolf within us hasn't vanished. It's evolved into something gentler, wiser, a guide, rather than a threat. So I believe this goes to you now, and we're going to
Mhm.
discuss.
Modern subcultures. You touched on, I believe, one of them, and then some of like the online and like the metaphysical side of things.
Uh huh.
But we're gonna look at some of the subcultures where people are drawn to that wild side, as it were.
Mm-hmm.
So, for most of us, werewolves live in stories, in the flicker of film and the turn of a page. But there are a lot of people today who take that myth and make it part of their lives. The werewolf hasn't vanished into fiction, it's evolved, just like it always has. You'll find modern werewolf subcultures in corners of the internet, at conventions, and in tight knit online packs. Some are artists and role players who use the werewolf as a symbol of personal power, instinct, or rebellion. Others call themselves Therians or otherkin, people who feel in some deep spiritual or psychological sense a connection to a particular animal species. For some, that is the wolf. They don't claim to literally transform under the moonlight, but they experience life through a dual lens, part human and part animal spirit. Let's dive a little bit deeper into the Therians, which I believe you had touched on for a moment, Foxfyre. The Therian community began forming in the late 1980s and early 1990s, growing out of early internet groups and pagan spaces. These were people sharing experiences that didn't fit neat little boxes. Dreams of running on four legs, instincts that felt older than the body they were born into, a sense of otherness that folklore seemed to explain better than psychology. And in that, the werewolf became a kind of mirror again. Not of fear this time, but of identity. Then there are the lifestylers and role players, modern packs who embrace werewolf imagery through community, music, fashion, or spirituality. Some gather under the full moon for ritual, others just howl for fun. For them, it's not a curse, it's connection, a way of embracing the animal nature that modern life tries to tame. And maybe that's what the werewolf has always been about, not just losing control, but remembering something primal. Not everyone thinks the legend lives only in symbolism or cultural connection. Even now, there are those who swear that they've seen something, a shape at the tree line, eyes reflecting back from the roadside, a figure too large to be a man and too upright to be a wolf. Which brings us into the strange and shifting world of modern sightings, stories that still make people lock their doors when the moon gets too bright. Let's start in Elkhorn, Wisconsin. In the late 1980s and early 90s, locals began reporting a creature stalking Bray Road, a hulking, fur-covered figure walking upright with the face of a wolf and the strength of a bear. Some saw it crossing the road, others claimed it chased their cars or tore at livestock. The journalist, Linda Godfrey, investigated the sightings, documenting over 30 first-hand accounts. She called it the Beast of Bray Road, and the legend took hold, not as an ancient curse, but as a living cryptid in the age of headlights and highways. Then, if we skip over to Michigan, there are stories of the Dogman that go back even further. The earliest written record dates to 1887, when two lumberjacks near Wexford County claimed they saw a creature, with a man's body and a dog's head, staring at them from the tree line. Sightings spiked again in the 1930s, the 1950s, and the 1980s. Howling in the night, scratches on doors, or shadows in the woods. All of these culminated in a wave of reports after a 1987 radio broadcast of The Legend of the Dogman, a novelty song written by DJ Steve Cook that accidentally revived a monster. Even today, residents of northern Michigan and the Upper Peninsula still whisper about glowing eyes at the edge of campfires. Further south, between Kentucky and Tennessee, there lies a stretch of wilderness called the Land Between the Lakes. And it's there, since the 1970s, that locals have told of the beast of the land between the lakes, a massive humanoid wolf said to walk on two legs, standing over 7 feet tall. Stories describe mutilated campers, shredded tents, and bone-deep claw marks on trees. It's one of the darker modern legends, part dogman's, part something older, something feral that never forgot the smell of human fear. To the east, Pennsylvania has its own share of lycan encounters. Since the 1960s, witnesses in areas like Westmoreland County, Chestnut Ridge, and Butler County have reported bipedal wolves prowling rural roads and forest trails. Paranormal researchers link these to Bigfoot reports, but locals say that the gait, the snout, and the eyes are unmistakably canine. If we travel even further south to Louisiana, tales of the rougarou still wind through Cajun folklore, a werewolf-like creature said to haunt the bayous and punish those who break Lent. In Texas, werewolf-like encounters stretch back to the early 20th century. Newspapers from the 1910s and 1940s mention wolfmen near the Rio Grande, described as large, upright creatures with glowing red eyes. More recently, reports near El Paso and San Antonio blend folklore, cryptid sightings, and even chupacabra lore, a uniquely Texan tangle of myth, desert, and night. Across the border in Quebec, there's talk of the loup-garou, the French-Canadian werewolf. Stories here date to the 17th century, carried by French settlers, and have survived through oral tradition. In modern day, particularly the 70s and 80s, rural witnesses reported large wolf-like creatures stalking farmland and roadsides. The Quebec werewolf remains part of Catholic and folk belief, often said to punish those who break Lent or neglect their faith. Similar to the old French colony of Louisiana with the rougarou. West in Alberta, Canada, dogman sightings have surfaced since the 1990s, often in the forests near Edmonton and Banff National Park. Descriptions match those of the Michigan dogman: tall, upright, broad-shouldered, with fur as black as oil and eyes that catch the light like burning amber. If we travel further south to Brazil, you'll find the lobisomem, a werewolf born of Portuguese myth and Catholic superstition. Tales go back to the 1600s, but modern encounters, particularly in rural Brazil and the Amazon basin, were reported in the 1950s through the 1990s. The lobisomem is said to appear on Friday nights, cursed by sin or witchcraft, and often described as more human than beast, a warning wrapped in fur. It's not just the Americas. If you cross the Atlantic, the British Isles have had their own share of howls in the night. In Northumberland, England, the Hexam heads, two carved stone faces, unearthed by schoolboys in 1971, were said to unleash a local curse. Not long after, witnesses in the area reported a wolf-like man roaming the moors. Whether coincidence, hysteria, or something strange, the Hexam werewolf became a brief but chilling chapter in British paranormal lore. Further south, the Cannock Chase werewolf of Staffordshire began appearing in reports around the 1970s and resurfaced in the 2000s. Hikers, motorists, and even police officers claimed to see a tall, gray-furred creature stalking the forest. Some described glowing red eyes, others swore they heard howling echo through the trees. And then there's the Hull werewolf, also known as Old Stinker, from Yorkshire. This legend dates back to medieval England, but modern sightings began again in 2016, when residents around Hull claimed to see a huge, upright wolf feeding on stray animals. Old Stinker was said to live in the nearby woods, a throwback to centuries-old tales of wolf-headed demons haunting the north of England. In mainland Europe, the stories grow older and a little colder. In the Thuringian forest of Germany, reports from the 1950s through the 1990s describe enormous wolves walking upright, often connected to older Germanic myths of the werewolf, spelled W-E-R-W-O-L-F. Local folklore ties these sightings to World War II legends. Cursed soldiers genetic experiments, or restless spirits bound to the land. Along the Polish and Czech border, villagers in the Beskid Mountains told of the Wilwolak. I probably pronounced that wrong. A word for werewolf dating back to Slavic folklore, with sightings as recent as the 1980s. These accounts often come from hunters and farmers describing massive humanoid wolves that vanish before sunrise. And in Russian and Eastern Europe, the Volkoldlak, the Slavic werewolf, remains part of the living legend. Modern sightings along the borders of Ukraine, Belarus, and the Baltic states, particularly from the 1970s through early 2000s, tell us of upright wolves near rural villages, sometimes connected to old burial sites or cursed forests. The word Volkodlak itself means wolf's hair, and in these places it's said that the creature isn't merely a monster but a revenant, the restless dead returned in the body of a beast. In India, reports of wolfmen stretch from the 1930s through the 1990s. Villagers in Uttar Pradesh, Bengal, and Maharashtra spoke of creatures that looked like wolves walking upright, sometimes attacking livestock, sometimes vanishing as soon as light touched them. Many of these stories coincide with wolf population surges and social unrest, yet their details echo Europe's lycanthropes too closely to ignore. Maybe the strangest thing about all these modern sightings and communities isn't what people claim to see or claim to be, but that we still at some level want to see it, want to believe. Even in an age of satellites and science, there's something in us that looks into the dark and wonders, what is out there? Maybe the werewolf endures because it speaks to something we all understand, the tension between the wild and the civilized, the seen and the hidden, the human and the beast. From ancient kings turned to wolves by gods to the glowing eyes on a midnight road in Wisconsin, the story's always been the same at its heart. It's not just about the creature that hunts in the dark, but the one that lives inside us, waiting for the moon to rise. Because whether it's myth, metaphor, or something flesh and blood, the werewolf reminds us that no matter how much light we build, there will always be shadows between the trees. And that's where we'll leave you, beneath a fading moon, where the world grows quiet, and the forest still listens.
I can hear a bad moon rising.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
literally what I was thinking of.
Yeah, like that's the only thing I can think of is that song right now. I was like, oh my gosh. No, just it's interesting how just after all these years, all these beers, however you want to put it, you know, with all the myth, the legends, and everything. The werewolf is about like Dracula and everybody else. It's one of our most prevalent and most long-lived legends and lore and myth that exists out there.
That's very true. Like, you can't, like, go in a bookstore or look on, I don't know, Netflix or something without seeing some kind of movie about werewolves or a TV show or a book or something. It's
Right. It kind of slaps you in
very
the face just
popular.
a wee bit.
Just a little.
Every time you see it, it's just like, hey, guess what? I'm here. And it's like, oh boy. But no, it's like I remember watching the original Teen Wolf with Michael J. Fox back in the 90s. Um, I remember watching the TV show with, I can't think what his name is now. But they did like a mini series with it. I remember seeing that. I never saw the remake
Oh,
that came out.
huh.
Um, but like, it's werewolves have been more prevalent in our um, society as things have gone. Back in my younger days, yeah, I was in the Yahoo group chats with Darians and Otherkin and all that and all those folk, and I never thought them as weird or outlandish. I was like, these are people who are connected on a spiritual and energetic level, not crazy folks who are doing
Yeah.
this. Um, like I in that group chat, it was Therians, Otherkin. There were people who believed they had Fey ancestry and Fey lineage. Um, There were psychic vampires, sanguine vampires, tantric vampires, which that was just interesting. Um, there was a little bit of everything in there. And for me, it's as I've gotten older and realizing, these are people who connect with these animals because there's animals have certain aspects that we've given them. We've anthropomorphized
Anthropomorphism.
them. There we go.
Mm-hmm.
In stories, because it's like, when you think of the fox, you think of them as sly, tricky, just like a
Yeah.
coyote. It's sly, tricky, but then there's also wisdom behind them as well because these are animal spirits, not specifically the animal themselves. Um, and the werewolf is exactly that. Some people may see it as a curse, some may see it as a blessing. Um, it just depends on the person and the time that the wolf shows its head in their life.
True.
You know, um, Vision quests and stuff like that existed for a reason. For you to find your inner animal spirit or your inner natural spirit and how you connect to nature. And and when we talk about magic with a K, that's what we're talking about is reconnecting with natural energies and how we can weave them and and bend them in such a way that it can actually do what we're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you don't. It's like it's. I think it's like something we've discussed multiple times. Primal magic is something you just don't mess with that hard.
Yeah.
Like you don't force primal magic. You ask primal magic to do what you want it to do.
You give a
Um,
suggestion, you're like, I would appreciate if we did this.
I
Please.
would appreciate if we did this, and here's 20 different offerings that I believe you will enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
Let's try this. Um, because it's also, like I say, too, love is probably one of the most oldest primal magics that you do
Yeah.
not mess with.
It does
Because
not end well.
it doesn't. Because I was actually talking to a shopkeeper at a local place that's about
Mm-hmm.
an hour away from me. And she was talking about how there was a girl in there talking about how she was going to have to do a cord cutting spell because she did a binding spell
Oh,
on her ex boyfriend
oh.
while they were together. And even I sat there and I looked at it. I said, love is one of the most oldest and rawest magics that exist out there. You
Yeah.
don't touch it because love itself is magical and it's supposed to happen the way it happens for a reason. The woman was even like, I've never heard anyone say that before, but it makes sense. I said, yes. I'm like, you have your basic elements earth, fire, water, and air, but love is a whole different element that ties with spirit.
Mm-hmm.
You don't force it because once you start to force it, then the question in your head will always be, does this person love me for me or do they love me because I pushed this spell on them?
Mm-hmm.
And that's
And
also when it goes haywire and becomes obsession by Calvin Klein.
to the interesting people and our friendly listeners and all that, the interested parties. If you're interested in doing something regarding love, might I recommend a I am open to finding love or I am worthy of love. Focus on yourself and being like, I'm ready. Don't try and put it out there and be like, find me somebody to love, because then you're gonna have like a weird, crazy stalker.
I'm ready for love. Someone come and bang this out. Um, Pretty much exactly. But no, it's because it's even like I tell friends who are looking for relationships and they're like, I really want to date somebody. And I tell them, I'm like, look, it'll happen when it happens. You can't force it.
Mhm.
What you have to do is you have to stop looking for it to show up.
Yeah. It'll come to you when you absolutely least expect it. It can come to you when you're like, I was not looking for this right now. I'm not ready for it right now. And it'll just be like, well, too bad it's here. Deal.
I know we're getting off the topic of like werewolves and stuff like that, but
Yeah.
just to kind of touch real quick on this, is you don't love happens when you least expect it. I have an aunt who married my uncle. My great grandmother had just passed away. She was at a club. My uncle was there with some of his other Marine buddies because my uncle's a Marine, and she's sitting there frumpadump wearing sweats and looking rough, and he bypasses all the girls gussied up, and he's like, would anybody be offended if I asked this young lady for a dance? And ever since, they've been inseparable. He's also been insufferable, but that's a different phrase. That's a different thing, you know. But that shows that love happens when you least expect it. She was going through a mourning period. She was hurt. And then this man shows up in her life, sweeps her off her feet, literally, and they begin a relationship together, a life and everything. So, give love a chance to do its thing and stop trying to force it. You'll find someone when it's time.
Hmm.
This is coming
And
from the matron and the crone, all right?
yep. Take your time. Love is one of those primal forces. So we're talking about the whole primal thing with the werewolves and the idea of the werewolf. Love is its own version of a primal force. Let's just put it that way.
It can either be a lamb or a wolf. Take your point, take your pick, babies. Take your pick. But other than that, I don't really think I have anything else. There was a lot of good information here,
Mhm.
a lot of good overlapping information in here.
Yeah, I like how
Uh,
we kind of had like little details that matched and like worked together. That was good.
yep, yep, yep.
Like
Um,
minds.
oh gosh, yes. So, with that being said, I think we're done for the night.
I
Um,
believe
a
so.
good episode. Of course, I'm sure everybody noticed that Bramble wasn't here tonight. We
Mhm.
all have lives, we have things that we have to do, and some of us just have moments where we just can't be here. So it's
Yeah.
always okay because even though he's not here physically with us, he's here with us in spirit.
Hmm. That's true. All
All
right.
right,
Well,
Raven, take us out.
we're gonna go ahead and close out our episode. So, Anubis, opener of the way, guardian of the thresholds and silent paths, we offer our gratitude. You have walked beside us in shadow and in light. You kept the darkness from our hearts. You taught us to find the truth and when to speak it. Thank you for your watchful eyes, for your patience, and for the protection you grant to those who call your name. May our actions honor your guidance, and our hearts remain true upon the scales. Keeper of souls, guardian of the dead, thank you for your wisdom and guidance. May your light forever lead us safely through the night. Dua Anpu, hail and thanks, Anubis. The fire dims, the trail fades, but the hollow bough still hums softly with mystery. Join us again, friend, when the wind shifts and the shadows beckon. Blessed be. Thank you for walking the winding path with us. If something stirred your spirit or sparked your curiosity, we'd love to hear from you. Share your thoughts, stories, or topic suggestions with us using the link below or leave a comment here or on our TikTok videos. Blessed be.